Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, we've gotten a decent, okay amount of rain. I mean, we're still in a deficit, but it's drizzly right now. Very cloudy. Supposed to, I think, about a 50% chance of rain today. But yesterday, especially afternoon, but really most of the day and throughout overnight, we got rain. Sometimes it was some pretty heavy downpours, but at least it was kind of, drizzly most of the time. So that's a benefit because Missouri has, especially southern part of Missouri, has been in a pretty serious drought conditions throughout most of the counties. In fact, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, the governor here declared 85 counties in emergency conditions because of the drought that's been going on. So the rain that we're getting, and they've gotten a whole lot more down in the southwest corner of the state. But it's definitely a blessing because it's been quite dry here lately. In fact, I think I saw a week or so ago, I think it was August, was the driest month on record for the state of Missouri. So just for those of you here in Missouri, it's something to think about. Also wanted to mention that the t-shirts that my wife and I have designed that are being made by Sanctified Supply Company, those are only a 2-month deal, and it ends this month. So if you're interested in the t-shirts, I'm not wearing one today, obviously, but we have a few designs, and then they're just a limited time deal. So at the end of this month, they're done forever. So if you want one, there is a link down in the comment section that'll take you there because I think they're pretty cool. They've been pretty popular. A lot of people love them. My wife designed a couple. I designed one, and they're made by a Sanctified Supply Company, which is they're just a wonderful couple. Small business. They're making them themselves. Good stuff. So anyways, thought I'd pass that along to you. So what I talked about last night in my video, I think it's a serious situation that's being developed, at least at the time being. We'll see how this one fans out. But basically, what's happened is Donald Trump is I hate to say it, but it appears as if he is kind of flip-flopping again. And it's not just me saying that. There are, different government, world government officials around the world that are pointing that out. It's for a while now, he has seemingly favored Vladimir Putin, been very harsh on Ukraine. And I want to make it clear, I'm no fan of Ukraine or Zelensky. I'm just pointing out facts. And he's, said things that indicates that he's not willing to support Ukraine anymore. Maybe that's the case. Says he's just done with it. Says he's he can't fix this and all this kind of stuff. And he has also stated recently that he's been very disappointed in Putin, and I believe it was yesterday stated that it's become apparent that his friendship with Putin did not weigh in at all on the matter of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And, several sources have said that they felt like, Trump was kind of being played by Vladimir Putin in that way. Well, so anyways, yesterday was the United Nations meeting. Trump spoke at it, said several different things. But then he came out yesterday evening with a social media post stating that he felt that Europe and Ukraine could take back Ukrainian territory that's been lost, and maybe even more due to this recent, last 3 years or so war with Russia. And that, praising Ukraine and criticizing Russia, called Russia a paper tiger, and that their economy was on the verge of collapse and that they could be easily defeated. He also came out publicly talking to Zelensky in front of cameras and said that that he felt that he called Zelensky a brave man and a hero or something like that to take on Russia. And so it seems like that it's once again flipped back to where, he's focused on Ukraine and siding with Ukraine. Well, Dmitry Medvedev, which if you don't know who that is, he's a former president of Russia before Putin, and he's the chairman of the Security Council in Russia. He's still a very powerful person. And I've said many times that I felt like he was kind of the mouthpiece for Putin. They seem to have a pretty good relationship. Putin doesn't say a whole lot and certainly doesn't post anything online, but I think that this guy is kind of that mouthpiece. And so he gets online last night and posts a very scathing opinion of Donald Trump and says that he's just, governing through social media and basically indicating he's only doing this for glory and attention, that whoever pays him the most attention is who he's siding with, and that this will only last a little while and all this kind of stuff. So I assume that that's probably going to upset Donald Trump. Now, the point to all of this, and some of you that watched this last night, you're saying you're just repeating things for the most part that you said last night. The point is that things are heating up. Yesterday, Trump, before the United Nations, told NATO members that they should shoot down any Russian plane that enters their territory. And now Poland has announced that, any Russian fighter jet that enters their territory will be shot down, period. That could definitely escalate things. Russia has said that if that happens, then they are at full war with NATO. There have been nuclear drills by Russia. Ukraine has been attacking Russian naval ships again. Everything indicates that NATO, especially Eastern Europe, are getting ready for a conflict. Now, this has been going on for a while, yes, but I'm talking about in just the last few days, there's been this, what appears to be, at least what's being reported in the news, a serious buildup and state of readiness for war. Putin did make some comments over the weekend, I believe, or in the last couple of days, that Poland needs to be reminded that part of their territory, their eastern territory, was a gift from Russia. You could take that as a threat or not. I would suspect that Poland is going to take that as a threat. So things are heating up there, and yes, they've been heating up, but most of the polling, most of the analysts that I've read in the last couple of days believe that it's closer now to a NATO versus Russia conflict than it's ever been. That there's at least a 50% chance that before the end of the year, there is a direct conflict between the two, which means the United States. Just recently, Donald Trump, and I believe it was either the Pentagon or the State Department, reiterated that the United States would come to NATO's aid. If NATO was attacked or an Article 5 was declared, that the United States would be involved in that. So, NATO is the United States. You all know that. We're getting close. I still think that this is pretty important. I'm not one of those that's constantly yelling every day or every other day that, World War III with Russia is about ready to happen. But things are certainly heating up. And here's what I have said all along. Based on what I can tell and what I know of Russian history and just how Russia is, and the things that they've said over the last few years, they're either going to win this war by just overwhelming Ukraine and destroying Ukraine and getting Ukraine to surrender, which is very unlikely since Ukraine is supported by the West, by NATO, or they're going to get into a place where they feel like that they have been put into a corner and that it's an existential threat to Russian sovereignty and, Russia as a whole, and then potentially lash out with nuclear weapons or, really kick the war up to a whole new level where there's, massive attacks on civilian populations or things like that. Russia is very methodical. They're very patient, but they do have their limits. And Russia is very much capable fighting very, very long wars. Most of the wars that Russia have been in, they have fought for very long lengths of time, and they have, used lots and lots of soldiers to do that, great losses to win or to have a stalemate. That just seems to be the Russian military way. Very different than Western, mythology, Western tactics. There's the word. I don't know if I sound like Biden or if I sound like Trump anymore. Methodology, that was the word that I was looking for. But the point is that it's looking more and more serious every day. And yeah, the question is how much longer is this just going to always be this way? And then just someday it just kind of tones down and they quietly walk away from this? Is there going to actually be some type of peace deal, ceasefire? It was one of the NATO countries, I think it was Great Britain, said that just the other day that according to their analysis and everything, that they believe that Russia is in no way serious about a ceasefire or a peace deal, that they want to conquer Ukraine. And honestly, most of what we see kind of indicates that. So at some point, something has to change. This cannot just continue to go on forever, even though it kind of looks that way. And what is happening right now is probably one of the bigger verbal escalations that I've seen throughout this war. And then there's also been, incursions into NATO airspace by Russia. So things definitely are heating up. And we need to be prepared for this because, if we get involved in this in a very direct way, and like I said last night, also Russian media and social media sources are saying that they have intelligence, or that the story from Russia is that the United States is quietly preparing for a direct confrontation with Russia. And so, we've got that. We've got the Middle East that's heating up quite a bit. We've got, Venezuela, Taiwan, all these other things. And even with the current popularity of the United States military and the increase in, people signing up, if we get involved in this kind of stuff, we've depleted a lot of our arms because of, Israel and Ukraine. And our numbers still aren't back to where they need to be. And we don't have a lot of experienced frontline ground troops. I mean, we may have some experienced, higher ranking people in the military, but our military is very green, whereas Russia's military is very experienced. So we have to start taking these things in consideration and realize that the possibility, if we get involved in this, of a draft is very high. Even if it's not a draft, there's definitely going to be some campaigns, pushing for people to, join up. The possibility of economic problems with a dollar that's just going down, and gold skyrocketing. Russia and China is just buying up gold like crazy. Supply chains, all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that can happen, and I've pointed many of these things out before. I don't think a lot of people pay attention because anymore, at least, because this has been going on for so long. And I think a lot of people just expect that this is just how it's going to be. Like, it's just going to be this way for many more years. And then at some point, it'll just kind of fizzle away. And I know that is a possibility, but I just don't think it's a likelihood. I think things are happening, and I think that it's very, very likely, not 100%, but likely, that something that a direct confrontation is coming before the end of the year, at least between Russia and NATO. And you need to, I think, be very ready for that, because it's going to change a lot of things. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Of course, there's always that nuclear threat. I think Russia is probably going to be more restrained on that. I think that they could potentially use a small tactical nuke on Ukraine, but as far as a nuclear threat here, I think it's very unlikely. I would see that more from, like, say, North Korea or some rogue, group, terrorist group or something that happens to get a hold of one. But still, These are things that we need to be preparing for. A type of, major global war, because things are just there. And as we get closer and closer to this, transferring of power in the world order, which is what is kind of happening, this fight for that, the odds of a greater, bigger world war is more and more likely. So, kind of that fourth turning thing. So anyways, get ready for it. It's definitely happening, and we will see over the next few days if Trump will flip-flop back again, or, if he's going to stay on this course for a while of pushing, NATO and Ukraine to go after Russia. We'll see. All right, folks, need to get your houses in order and prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.